The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. These Best You EXPO talks are recorded in front of a live audience in a live event. We highly recommend that you focus on the message. As they say, what you focus on expands. Enjoy. Mastin Kipp. Mastin is an American entrepreneur, best-selling author, and a renowned public speaker, and the creator of the Functional Life Coaching. Mastin is the founder of thedailylove.com, and his mission is to reconnect people with what makes them happy. He believes that happy people make better choices, and better choices make for a better planet. Kipp founded The Daily Love as a place to blog and inspire hope, and what started as a feed for quotes sent to friends skyrocketed after a tweet from Kim Kardashian. Their website now reaches tens of thousands of people every week, and he's on a mission to remind people that life is too short and to get the most love out of every day. Oprah Winfrey dubbed Kipp as an up-and-coming thought leader of the next generation of spiritual thinkers. He is the author of the best-selling book Daily Love and Claim Your Power. I had the pleasure of interviewing Mastin in a webinar. I met him personally a couple of times, and he is just one of the best, most congruent and genuine guys in the industry. He is all energy, all love, and he walks his talk. So I was honored to have Mastin speaking at our first event in Long Beach in California. And the title of his talk is Discovering Your Life Unique Purpose. So you're going to love his talk, full of energy. Thank you so much.
The world will try to convince you that there's nothing you can do to change it.
I alone can fix it.
But there is a power that allows ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Great leaders have it.
I have a dream.
Yes, we can.
Great entrepreneurs have it.
Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. There is no reason not to follow your heart.
People who change the world have it.
They thought that the bullet would silence us, but they failed.
You have this power too. When you are inspired by purpose, all your thoughts break their bonds.
Purpose is what creates true happiness.
Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And you find yourself in a new, great, and wonderful world. Dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive. And you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The only difference between living life on the world's terms and having everything you've ever wanted is one thing: purpose. Purpose is the one thing that changes everything. Nothing can stop an idea whose time has come. The power to live your purpose isn't in their hands. It's in yours.
Purpose is that feeling that you are a part of something bigger than yourself, that you are needed, and that you have something better ahead to work for. You are graduating into a world that needs purpose, and it's up to you to create it.
On September 12th, the time has come for you to claim your power.
Our purpose for being here, the amazing, inspiring Mastin Kipp. Give him a round of applause, everybody.
Thank you, Lynn. Let's hear it for Lynn, you guys. Getting that energy raised. Oh, for God's sakes, it's Lynn. Give it up for Lynn, Jesus. It's amazing. All right. Hi. How you guys doing? Not too bad for a Sunday, huh? So, by the way, September 12th, that was what happened before. This is a trailer for a book I just released called Claim Your Power. And today we're going to be talking about a really interesting topic. It's a topic that I'm actually introducing for the first time, and I've really been thinking about how to bring this high-level concept to you in a way that's really actionable and realistic and very pragmatic, and also fun, entertaining, and in a very short period of time, because the shortest thing I usually do is 4 days. So when they said I had an hour, I was like, I'll do my best. So I'm going to go fast, and I'm also going to give you some new concepts and new ideas, but my ask is that you take in what I'm saying instead of trying to capture everything. I talk really fast. If you try to capture everything, there's no way you're going to do it, you're going to miss it. Is that cool? Is that cool, guys? Okay, cool, awesome. So we're talking about hacking your nervous system and how to stay consistently aligned with your purpose. Now, we do a lot of research and a lot of data on the people who are doing personal development work, and typically, the majority of the people in the room are doing personal development work either in the form of therapy, coaching, reading a book, moving forward in some type of program or seminar, and they have these ideas and these concepts, but they're actually not getting results yet. It's just still an idea, and they're thinking to themselves, how do I make it real? Anybody wondering that? Let me see by show of hands. Anybody wondering that? So we're going to talk about how to actually make it real. My assumption is that you've heard something, you've seen a Facebook quote card that's inspiring, you've read a book or two, and so we're going to have a little bit more of an elevated conversation today and something a little bit more refined. And the other thing is, the perspective that I come at with our content is never about right or left, good or bad, Republican or Democrat, black or white. I look through the world through the lens of trauma. All my work is trauma-informed, and here's the thing about trauma. Trauma is like cancer. Republicans get it, Democrats get it, men get it, women get it, black people get it, white people get it. Everybody gets cancer, and everyone also has trauma, and it's trauma that's really holding you back. And I'm going to share with you what that means here in a second, because one of my missions in life is to end emotional trauma in my lifetime, and my goal right now is to normalize the conversation around trauma, because I view the conversation around trauma where meditation was about 10 years ago. Remember meditation 10 years ago? Was it a high-performance tool? What was it? It's a weird woo-woo thing where you have to like have crystals and the Akashic records, and you kind of like are in the closet about meditation, and now you're like, oh yes, I meditate, it's on my resume, right? Like, so my goal in the next few years is to normalize the conversation around trauma, because everybody has it, and healing trauma is a high-performance tool. It's not just for someone who's in this, paralyzed state, that's sort of the cliche around trauma. But that's what we're talking about today. So if I say something that's polarizing, the only reason it's polarizing for you maybe is because you're not viewing it through the lens of trauma. You're viewing it through the lens of what's right and what's wrong, and that's not the conversation today. So I might say something about somebody, and these days it's like people go, Mastin, I'd rather you just have a motivational speech than talk about something meaningful. That's not me, right? Because we're at a time in life today where we no longer have the privilege to be polite about what matters most. Do you agree? Yeah. So that's what's going to happen today. We're going to cut right to the heart of it. And I want to let you know that, because if it's the first time you're seeing me, you might think, what the fuck did that guy just say? Like, what's going on here? That's just how we roll. Does that sound cool? All right, cool. Now, if you disagree with anything I say, disagree 60 minutes from now, but for the next 60 minutes, open your mind to what might be possible. And if you think it's wrong, let it be wrong later. But for right now, be open. Sound good? All right, cool. So, let's see if this thing works. Okay, great. So William James, who's the father of American psychology, said this: the great thing then in all education is to make our nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. For this, we must make automatic and habitual as early as possible many useful actions as we can, and guard against the growing into ways that are likely to be disadvantageous to us, as we should guard against the plague. Here's what he's saying. Bad habits, things that hold you back, mindsets, traumas, all those things are a dis-ease, a distance from ease, just like the plague, right? And that's, by the way, this is like in the 1800s, just so you know. Okay? And what's interesting is he says, the more of the details of our daily life that we can hand over to the effortless custody of automatism, which means the good habits become automatic. Like it's just, you automatically meditate. You automatically have kindness. You automatically have abundant thoughts. You're automatically doing what's good for you. Then the more our higher powers of mind will be set free for their own proper work. Now, he is the founder of psychology in America, who's also a Harvard philosopher. And everything I do is about that opening sentence, which is making your nervous system your ally. If you're not getting the results in your life, no matter how many concepts you've heard, you'll never actually get the result until you think it's safe to do it. And most of us think success on some level isn't safe. And I'll get into what that means here a little bit further, okay? So the thing is, as James was introducing psychology for the first time in the 1800s in Harvard, he still wasn't convinced that it was hard science. He says, this is no science, it is only the hope of a science. That comes from his essay, Psychology, A Briefer Course, in 1892. So in 1892, the leading thought was, maybe one day we could take this thing called psychology and make it a science, but for right now it's a soft science. And that's been true for a long time. What we can say here is that discovering the science of making your nervous system your ally has been a hope. It's been something people have talked about. People hear this idea of power of intention. You look at the 1900s, you got Freud coming out, you got Carl Jung coming out. Then you start evolving into the spiritual conversation with Louise Hay, Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra coming out. But what's happening is, what's the data? You guys know what I mean by that? Like, what's actually happening? Like, is an affirmation really enough, or is that just superstition? Is kale juice really the answer, or is that just a superstition? Does changing my mind really work, or does it always go back? And what I've seen consistently is when human beings are presented with a truism, there's a momentary aha moment that doesn't end up having a lasting result. Where you have an aha moment, and the next day you wake up and you're like, what was that thing yesterday, the breakthrough I had? And you're like, oh, who cares? What's on Instagram, right? Who knows what I'm talking about, by the way, right? So here's the deal. Until now, it is no longer a soft science. And that's what I'm super excited to talk to you about today. I want to introduce this idea of trauma hacking. And I consider myself a trauma hacker. I've been thinking about it for like a decade. Like, what do I actually do? I hack trauma. And I'm going to let that idea unfold as I speak today. And my goal here is to kind of have this be the starting point of other people who are like, that's probably what I do too. Like, now we can name it. And it's data driven, meaning we can actually study it, we can weigh, we can measure, we can see what's happening in the brain, what's happening in the microbiome, what's happening with neural pathways, what's happening to the myelin, what's happening to cortisol levels, and what's happening with lipid levels. We can study all of this now, and what's interesting is it all correlates back to root cause trauma, which we'll talk about. So trauma hacking encompasses all of these different things. So there's a ton of stuff out there. There's no way you can ever read all of it, but everything from body work to SPECT imaging, to cognitive behavioral therapy, to naturopathic work, chiropractic, hypnotherapy, microbiomes, yoga nidra, exercise, psychotherapy, psychiatry, Reiki, biofeedback, Rolfing, emotional freedom technique, neuroassociative conditioning, neuroscience. All of it is in this field of trauma hacking because we're all talking around the idea of it, right? And what's interesting is, who here has ever felt better after maybe a meditation or a breathing exercise? Who here had the anxiety return? Why? How come? Is it because you're not good enough? Did you do the meditation wrong? Was Mercury in retrograde perhaps? The reason is you took the pressure off. It's like trauma's like a pressure cooker. Right? And if you just open the top and let the pressure out, you'll feel better for a moment. But if you put the top back on and you don't address the root cause, the pressure builds up again. And that's what anxiety is today. Anyone who has anxiety or stress has unhealed emotional trauma. And they don't want to admit it, and there hasn't been a conversation around it. So trauma hacking, this is what I do. So in my work, what I do is I talk louder than the person yelling behind me. And what we do is, depending on the situation, we alter our recommendations for people because every single person has a different thing that traumatized them and has different mechanisms or different symptoms, and therefore needs a completely different recommendation than just change your mindset. It's too vague. We have to be more specific. So that's what trauma hacking is all about. And the main thing that differentiates trauma hacking from the rest of the self-improvement world is that it's an integrated and personalized and also multimodality system-based approach to identifying and healing your own root cause trauma. So think of it this way. No one knows you better than who? You do, right? And the problem with a lot of self-help people or diet people is they come out with something that worked for them and they make the assumption it should work for everybody else. And that's dangerous because what worked for one person may not work for somebody else. I've been consulting a company called Viome, V-I-O-M-E, and they licensed some technology from the Department of Defense, spent millions of dollars studying the microbiome. And what they found is that even with food, spinach, for example, isn't good for everybody. It's not just anti-inflammatory. It's anti-inflammatory for some people, but for other people, it causes inflammation. Spinach! Can you imagine? Now, I fell in love with this company because when I did my test, it told me I couldn't eat kale. And I said, fuck you, kale, and your publicist. I never liked you in the first place. Right? But the idea is that if there's no such thing as a healthy food just for everybody or universal healthy foods, the same thing's true when it comes to personal development work. One person, it might be Kundalini Yoga. For somebody else, it might be emotional freedom technique. For somebody else, it might be EMDR. For somebody else, it might be life coaching. For somebody else, it could be bungee jumping. For somebody else who's an introvert, it's not talking to people for a year. I don't know. But everybody has a different modality, a different trauma, and we have to start looking at it in a much more personalized way because these grandiose, vague sort of platitudes were good for like the 90s till now, but moving forward with all the data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, the ability to look at inside the body of what's actually happening and studying it, it's giving us so much more information than we ever had, and we're learning like, no wonder I didn't get the result. I didn't heal the root cause trauma, and my trauma is different than your trauma. Every single trauma is absolutely unique and different. And so one of the greatest high-performance skills that you can acquire is trauma hacking. Because here's the thing. The only thing holding you back is unhealed trauma. That's it. You think it's procrastination. You think it might be perfectionism. You think it might be a money mindset issue. Those are all symptoms of a deeper issue. Who follows? Does this make sense? Think of it this way. Do you guys know about functional medicine? Functional medicine, if you have high cholesterol when it comes to functional medicine, they don't just give you a statin and say, here, let me lower your cholesterol artificially and force your body into submission. A functional medicine doctor says, why? And they look for the root cause. And we have to start having this conversation when it comes to personal development too, because just like there's a physiological root cause for what's wrong in your life, there's also an emotional root cause as well. And until we start to identify what the root cause is, you will be stuck like a hamster on the hamster wheel over and over and over again, thinking that you're wrong because the affirmations aren't working. The affirmations are great. We just have to have a deeper conversation. And so the idea of neuroplasticity is the key. That's how we know that we can change things, okay? What's neuroplasticity? James actually was the first one to introduce the idea. He says, it's basically you possess a structure weak enough to yield to influence, but strong enough not to yield all at once. Isn't that interesting? It's like weak enough to be influenced, but it doesn't crash all at once. This is why, if you have a breakthrough, is that the only thing you got to do to change your life is have that one moment? No, because what's going to happen is it's not going to yield to that breakthrough all at once. Your nervous system won't say, okay. So if you ever had a breakthrough, an aha moment, and it hasn't stuck, it's because you're a normally functioning human being with a nervous system. You have to have spaced repetition over a period of time to inform your nervous system to say, this is the new way. And here's the thing, when you start to get into neuroscience, what we know is the neural pathway that forms a bad habit doesn't go away when you have a better habit installed. It just gets turned off. But guess what? You can go back to it. That's called relapse. Who follows? Does this make sense? Think of it this way. Do you work out once at a conference for 30 minutes and say, I worked out, where's my six-pack? Yes or no? Some people do. They're delusional. Right? But with working out, it's a training mindset. And the same thing has to be true for our emotional freedom and our emotional healing, is it's a training process. And when you stop the training, you can go back to the old ways because those pathways are in you. Who follows? Does this make sense? I know I'm talking fast, but you guys with me on this? Is this too high-level stuff? Are you guys with me? You guys with me? Okay. So the good news is we now know that you can change. That's the good news, right? But the question is, how do I actually change? That's really the question. It's not going to come from just reading or just doing the surface level stuff. That stuff is awesome, and trust me, like, drinking a kale smoothie is way better than injecting heroin into your arm, right? But if you haven't done the underlying trauma work, you're still not going to get the result. Who follows? Does this make sense? Okay. So let me put this into a different context. We're here at the Best You EXPO. It's the first one in the United States. And I'm here because Bernardo is the man, the founder of this, is really in the right place with integrity, and he is really mission focused, and that's why I'm here. And this is something that I'm doing because I believe in the mission. So let's talk about the best you. Why do you want to be the best you? What would you have said before you came here? What's the best you mean to you? Purpose, gifts, I would probably say something along the lines of successful. Meaning you want to go from a lower state of success to a higher state of success emotionally, financially, spiritually, whatever. Would you say that's generally true? I can't hear you because there's so much noise. Yes, guys? Okay, cool. So the question is, but why? Why do you want to be successful? You got more money, now what? You get more love, now what? You lose the weight, now what? Then what? You got to make the impact, then what? One of my friends, her number one goal was to become a New York Times bestselling author. She did it. She stressed over it for a year and a half. She was happy for 3 days. What a waste of time. Could you imagine putting a year and a half of time into being happy for 3 days? Is that valuable return on investment? What do you guys think? Now, yeah, cool. It's cool to be called a New York Times bestseller, but the emotional experience was 3 days long. It's crazy. So what we see is that there's only one major difference between people who thrive financially, spiritually, and romantically versus people who are really stuck and stagnated. There's one difference. Can you guess what it is? It's obviously the best You EXPO, for God's sakes. But for real, the only difference is purpose. That's it. Let me explain, because it's completely related to trauma, believe it or not. The reason why the world's looking for purpose today is because the world's looking for the context of their pain. A spiritual quest, a personal development quest, a life reinvention, your second act, however you want to phrase it, is ultimately a search for context or meaning. Why did this happen to me? That's the question people want to ask. And up until now, the answer is, I don't fucking know. Or the answer is, well, obviously because you're a piece of shit. Right? That's what you would tell yourself. Never ask yourself when you're in a lowered state, why did this happen to you? You will not come up with good answers. Think about that. Think about if you really ask yourself, why did this happen to me when you're in a down state? What type of answers would you give yourself? Don't talk to yourself that way, right? So we can answer that question now. So when we start looking at purpose, there are now researched, studied, and actual side effects of purpose that come from peer-reviewed research that had no funding, therefore no intention to skew the data. And then also, I've worked with tens of thousands of people, mostly women, and I have tens of thousands of pieces of experiential data. And here's what we find. You get financial abundance, you set the example for your kids, you can create real soulmate love, you literally can raise your HDLs and lower your LDLs, you can have lower A1C, there's never been a pharmaceutical advertisement for that. You can improve the quality of your sleep, you can improve immune function, you can lower the risk of heart attack, you can build resilience, you can add up to 7 years of your life. That's from a recent peer-reviewed study. It creates true leverage to change. When you have purpose, that's what gets you out of being stuck. And it aids in neuroplasticity. It means that when you have a sense of purpose, it's like now you can start to really get that training mindset going where your nervous system starts to shift more because it's now a lifestyle. Right? It also aids in the healing of emotional trauma. When you find context or purpose in the pain that you went through, that's what can set you free. And it aids in creating emotional and trauma resilience. What that means is when you have a sense of purpose, you can go through hell and you can come out unscathed. See, it's not what you go through, it's how you go through it that matters most. That's the most important thing. So who here thinks this is good shit? This is, and by the way, it's not that it's free because you're going to have to do stuff to change your life, but purpose is a decision. It's not a pill, a drug, a book, or signing up in the back for something. It's literally just a decision. You have to have support for that, but at the end of the day, it's free. The work and the coaching is not free, by the way. Okay. Now, we got to define what purpose is because I attend events like this and speak all over the world. And here's the thing. There's such a misconception of what purpose is. And imagine this for a second. Imagine that we had a room full of scientists and I said, okay, what is oxygen? And every scientist gave me a different answer. Do you think it'd be hard to figure out other scientific shit if we couldn't agree what oxygen was? What do you guys think? So there's no common definition. So I'm going to give you a clinical definition and then my definition, which is better than the clinical definition as far as I'm concerned, okay? So the clinical definition is this. And when purpose is possessing a high sense of purpose is associated, sorry. This is actually backing up my data for a second. I apologize. So the Psychosomatic Medicine Journal says that a purpose in life is associated with literally reducing all-cause mortality and cardiovascular events. What's all-cause mortality? Death! So literally having purpose can save your life. It's documented to add up to 7 years to your life. So if you're worried about your parents going, help them find their purpose. If you look at the blue zones, where people live to be over 100, consistently across the board, all the elderly have a sense of purpose. That's what keeps them around, all right? So you can think of purpose as the immune system of your emotional life. What's the purpose of an immune system? Keeps the bad guys out and keeps the good guys in, right? And you can think of purpose as keeping the bad emotions out and keeping the good emotions in. It's what builds resilience. It's not just an affirmation. An affirmation can be a tool, but it's not enough. You can also think about purpose as being the doorway between your inner experience and your environment, right? Who here feels like the environment today in the world has shifted in the last 2 years? Who here thinks it's gotten better? Who thinks it's gotten worse? Who here thinks it got worse so it could get better? So what's interesting is when you have a sense of purpose, you are not as affected by the comings and goings of life. And it doesn't mean that you don't do anything about it. But what it means is that you don't lose your power. It means that no matter how loud someone's being, it doesn't mean that you can't speak up. And it doesn't mean that just because someone disagrees that you should be silent. And it doesn't mean just because someone's uncomfortable that you should be silent. It doesn't mean just because people want to put you into a spiritual, motivational box and not talk about politics or moral judgment that you should be silent. Who am I talking about? You and me, because you're definitely a leader in your life. And here's the thing. We no longer live in a world where we have the privilege to stay silent about things that matter most. Doesn't matter. You're a Republican and offended? Don't care. You're a Democrat and offended? Don't care. I don't really care about someone being offended. What I care about is, are you thinking about it? Because there's trauma on all sides. There's white trauma and black trauma. There's neo-Nazi trauma. There's all lives matter trauma. There's Black Lives Matter trauma. There's Muslim trauma. There's Jewish trauma. There's Christian trauma. There's atheistic trauma. There's science trauma. Trauma is an equalizer. And here's the thing. Just because you're experiencing trauma doesn't mean it's greater or less than someone else, but all trauma has to be recognized before it can be healed, which means we got to all pause and say, you're hurting too? Let's stop passing on the suffering and go from there. And that will take some time, but hopefully we can start to build a world of what I call trauma hackers so that we can really help spread this message, because my goal one day is that we live in a world where emotional trauma does not exist. And we can disagree in a way where there's no violence. Only half the room is happy about that. The rest of you guys want to stay traumatized. Just kidding. So this means that the most important question you're ever going to ask is essentially, what's my purpose? And the problem is, most people are getting answers to that, but they're not living it. So there's this doubt like it's even possible. Or maybe you thought you knew what it was, and then you lost it. Or maybe you're like, purpose? I'm fucking purpose. Screw you, Mastin. Life has no meaning. I'm a nihilist, right? Or maybe you're a pessimist. I don't care. The idea is you can find purpose. So you've got to ask that question consistently. And therefore, the second most important question, what do you think it is? If the first question is, what's my purpose? Second question is, what do you think? How do I stay consistently aligned? By the way, not how do I just find it and keep it. That's not really realistic. Because who here's ever fallen off track? Who here thinks you're going to fall off track? Who here thinks that's just part of the way it goes? Right? This idea that you're going to get somewhere and stay somewhere is insane. That's perfectionism. That's all it is. And here's the thing. An airplane is off course 99% of the time, and yet magically they still arrive. Why? Because when they get off course, what do? They come back on course. Now, if an airplane was, if we guided an airplane like most of us live our lives, it would be like, all right, we're going over here. Oh no, it didn't go the way we thought. We're never going to fucking get there now. Jesus Christ, fuck. Now we're going to Alaska. Great. Right? Like that's how it would be. But pilots just come right back. And so that's how you got to start thinking about it is, it's not about how much you stay on track. It's about how fast you get back on track. That's the name of the game. Because of course you're going to fall off track. And that's not negative thinking. That's just real. Who follows? Does this make sense?
If you're interested in sharing your story, sharing your dreams, sharing your ideas in the largest personal development platform, the Best You EXPO, sign up today. Go to www.thebestyouexpo.com or send an email to info@thebestyou.co.
So, let's talk about this. Why do we set goals? Because it's completely related to purpose. Why do we set a goal? Financially, spiritually, romantically? What's the purpose of a goal? Growth, action, fulfillment. I'm gonna give you such a boring but accurate answer. You'll go, ugh, but it's super important, okay? So just don't be impressed by what I'm about to share with you, but also take it in, all right? We set goals to feel. It's an emotional target. That's why we set goals. You want to feel a certain feeling. Love, joy, romance, freedom, certainty, expansion, acceptance, belonging, connection, you name it. You know, a romantic relationship. Nobody gets into a romantic relationship to be in proximity of a human body that's alive only. Like, oh, thank God you're alive. Right? Like, nobody has that standard, I don't think. If you do, we got to talk, right? But we get into a romantic relationship for love and passion and connection and criticism and blame. No, I'm just kidding. We get into a romantic relationship because we want positive emotions from that relationship, right? Why do you have a financial goal? Why do you want to have more money? Typically freedom, but also certainty, which are opposite emotions. It's very interesting, safety and freedom, right? So why do you want to lose the weight? It depends. Some people want to have vitality. Some people want to have significance on Instagram. But they're still going for an emotional target. Who follows? Does this make sense? It's always about the emotional targets. And so my definition of purpose is that it's an emotion that you cultivate within yourself and express to others in the form of service. That's a lot in one sentence. You have to, first of all, it's an emotion. It's not stuff. It's not a business. Certainly not a business. It's not having kids. It's not having a relationship. None of that. It's an emotional state. And when you transfer it to others, that's how you win. Now, if that sounds strange or woo-woo, let me give a couple examples. What happens in a soulmate relationship if both people are in consistently positive emotional states? They have sex! Okay, that's one thing that could happen. What else? Could you imagine filing for divorce? The reason, we were both just so fucking happy. Irreconcilable happiness. Said nobody ever, right? And when you think about, like, in a business, how is this applicable to business? When you have a great company culture, that's one of the keys of success in business. Would you agree? All day long. That's just a shared emotional state. That's all it is. And when you talk about raving fan clients, it's transferring those emotions to your clients. And the people who buy over and over and over again do it because there's an emotional connection to your brand. In fact, Tony Hsieh, founder of Zappos, literally wrote a book called Delivering what? Happiness, which is what? It's an emotion. Oh my God. Right? Duh. But we don't think about it because we're always trying to go for the $1 billion status or more followers or whatever it might be. But this is an emotional game. And here's the thing. It's not out there. It's in here. And they're invisible, which is a bummer. Right? But you can feel it. And here's the thing. You have to learn how to cultivate those emotions within yourself, not take them or consume them or expect other people to give them to you because they're behaving how you think they should behave. God help you if that's your model of the world. Go to a Codependence Anonymous meeting if that's you. Because that's the deal. You have to behave a certain way in order for me to be happy. They have all the power. They have all the power. Versus understanding, you know what? I actually need to be on the line here to create these emotions. And the problem is, it's very difficult to create generative and positive emotional states in your body if you have not done your trauma work. Because the nervous system does not want you to be happy if you've experienced trauma, because happiness is vulnerable. Vulnerability means you can be hurt again. Who follows? Does this make sense? So literally you're your own worst enemy, but also keeping you safe so you're your own best friend. It's very confusing in the nervous system. Like I want it, but I don't want it, but come here, go away. I want the money, but I don't want to be seen, but I want it to work hard, but I don't want to work that hard, but I need the money, so I go out there and put it out there, but not just yet because it's not perfect enough. And I'll go live on Facebook tomorrow, but maybe actually next week. And I'll buy a $1,000 program that I never use, but I feel like I'm an entrepreneur because I follow someone on Instagram who's in Bali starting a business, right? Like, this is the insane thoughts that we think. Who follows? Does this make sense? That's my life, Mastin. Yeah, exactly, I know. We do tons of research to understand our peeps, right? So you've got to learn how to cultivate this in you and not observe it online, right? And the biggest part is you have to then express it. If you're keeping it in, doesn't do any good, and you can't express it like it's all about me. Who fucking cares? Nobody cares. Nobody's here for me. You guys are here because there's something about this environment that's going to help you better your life. That's why you're here. I know that, right? And so That's why you then have to express it in the form of service to others. And you want to know why that's so hard for people? It's very well known that you have to serve other people. But you want to know why it's hard to do that if you're going from like being stuck into service? You guys want to know why? Is that yes? Okay, let's making sure. So it's very simple actually. Most people hit a rock bottom because they overgave to somebody else. And the last thing they want to do is fucking give again. Serve others? What about me? And the nervous system says, you can't help other people because when you help other people, you lose yourself, you collapse, and you will end up right back where you were, so it's about me. And that lasts for a period of time, but to really have things start to take off, you gotta be so healed in your nervous system that you can serve and not have to worry about whether you're gonna get yours or not because you're so lit up and you're not being over-responsible. Over-giving, you're giving just enough. You have that resilience. Who follows? Does this make sense? Okay, so then what produces emotion? If emotion's the name of the game, what produces emotion? Vodka? Is that what you said? Oh, yeah? So, context. How you see something, your interpretation of something. Viktor Frankl figured this out in Auschwitz, right? Certain people in Auschwitz were going through hell, and yet they made it through, and other people didn't because their context was, it's still gonna be better somehow. If your context is, it's fucking over. If your context is, I'm a piece of shit. If your context is, that person's more powerful than me, or some version thereof, it will be literally impossible for you to create a positive emotional state in your body. So you have to watch your context. That is, what does this mean? What does this event mean? Donald Trump getting elected, what does it mean? What's it mean? Does it mean the world's fucked? Is that what it means? Does it mean that everyone who voted for him is racist? Is that what it means? Kinda? Does it mean that, what? You can't do anything about it? Does it mean that we can't disagree online with people that we know and we have to unfriend them? What does it mean? So she's saying it's brought the focus to the problems. I agree. That's actually a statement of fact. Would you say that's true? We're definitely way more aware of the problem now. But here's the thing. What it means is only up to you. And what happens is, all of a sudden, contexts are bumping up against each other. And that's what's happening today, is that you have root cause trauma on both sides, and the context of both are bumping up against each other. And that's what's happening in America today, is America is coming to terms with and having come to Jesus, a sobering moment of, we are racist. We are. And there's long-term guilt for white people, for sure, and there's long-term oppression for most minorities. And white people are just now experiencing it a little bit, and I think it was Glennon Doyle Melton who was like, we need to be quiet and listen to minorities right now because like they've been going through this for like 200 fucking years. Well, before that too, right? Because what's happening is trauma's coming to the surface. And what we do with it is everything. If you go out there and start to just bash on someone for voting for Donald Trump, you're passing your suffering on. If you're a part of the Me Too movement, my heart is with you. I work with mostly women. I've had a front row view to that for the last 10 years. You can't go out there and start hating men because you're passing your trauma on. You can't just pass it on and blame somebody else. You have to look at how did I participate in this and how can I heal this and then start to view the world through not what's wrong with that person, but what happened to that person. That's the name of the game right there. And when we start to look at things that way, the context shifts. That's why me, a white man, can stand on stage and talk about race relations without the whole room getting triggered. Because I'm not talking about black and white. I'm talking about emotional trauma, which is a different context. Would you say that's true? All day long. I had to think about it for a long time. I didn't know how to address this stuff. It's a touchy subject, right? But what I see for sure, a very factual basis is the trauma's coming to the surface, and it's up to each and every one of us to say, what are we going to do with this? Because everybody has trauma. Every single being has trauma. So very quickly, the anatomy of transformation, these are, in my book, Claim Your Power, the 5 layers from most surface down to most deep. Behavior, this is what you're doing. Stories or thoughts, this is what you're thinking, what you're telling yourself. Emotions, that's what you're feeling. Context and meaning, that's what you made the original trauma or original incident mean. Someone went through something, you were abandoned, your father was 5 minutes late picking you up, you experienced sexual abuse, physical abuse, emotional neglect, you have an anxious attachment instead of a healthy attachment to something, someone broke your heart, someone cheated on you. The meaning informs the rest of it. The meaning informs the rest of it. And so what I help people do is focus right there. Because everything above that is noise. And the news media only talks about behavior. It's an endless conversation. It's endless. Republican, Democrat, woman, man, black, white, Muslim, Christian, endless behaviors. And there are certain values that should be eliminated from the earth, but anyone who really is firmly in the neo-Nazi mindset, I guarantee you has a root cause trauma that they're trying to cope with. That's an explanation, not an excuse. There's a big difference. None of this is excusing the behavior. I'm trying to help you understand the behavior. Who follows? Does this make sense? So when I do my work with people, the top level stuff is relatively meaningless. I get down to what happened and what did it mean, because that informs everything else. Now, if someone like a Larry Nassar, for example, the doctor who took advantage of all the women, all the Olympic gymnasts, there's an awful story, right? It's not like you're going to see this and go, okay, he's off the hook. I think he should be in jail for the rest of his life. And at the same time, this is what's actually happening. So in order to prevent another Larry Nassar or another fill in the blank, another school shooter, whatever it is, when you put guns in schools that are already experiencing gun violence and you don't address the root cause trauma, you are not setting up anybody for success. There will be more violence, not because it's a political statement, but because trauma creates more trauma. And until you have the real conversation, the behavioral stuff doesn't matter. Who follows? Does this make sense? So that's how we have to start to view the world. So the thing is, your nervous system does not want you to change. It doesn't want you to change. It wants you to stay just like you are, safe and alive. And the problem is your heart, your soul, your spirit comes in and says, I want more. And your nervous system says, okay, but tomorrow. You'll break up with him tomorrow. Oh, you know what? Let's see. It's March, so, gosh, he really loves March Madness, so maybe in April. But his mother died on Easter, so maybe Memorial Day, we're going to have that plan. 4th of July, January. Right? I want to quit my job and start a business in 6 months. The 6 months is bullshit. It's far enough away for you to say, I'm going to do it, or close enough for you to say that you're going to do it, but far enough away for you to say, not yet. You need to have a 3-month plan max. Ideally, 4 or 5 weeks is ideal, because then it kicks your nervous system into gear. So stuck is homeostasis. You guys know what homeostasis is? It's like normal, right? And here's the thing about the nervous system. Your body, it's all of its regulatory properties, wants homeostasis, because how it's working now means it's alive. Right? If your temperature gets too hot, you die. If it gets too cold, you die. If blood sugar gets too high, you die. Too low, you also die. There's a range. It's like a thermostat. You guys understand? So the nervous system says, okay, you can be within this function and this range and no more. So not too rich, not too poor, just right here. Not too visible, not too invisible, just right here. Not too liked, not too disliked, just right here. Who follows? Does this make sense? So here's the thing. You gotta be real. Your nervous system wants homeostasis, which means if you're on a personal development journey and actually change your life, you have to have such a strong, strategic, and lifestyle transformation that you have to shift your nervous system consistently. And it's gonna feel like this. This is a great fucking idea. Oh fuck, what have I done? Oh my God, this is fucking amazing. Oh my God, what the fuck is happening to me? I can't believe I was freaking out. Oh my God, people are really judging me now. What was I thinking about? They're a bunch of motherfucking fools. Oh my God, I'm all alone. Wait, everyone's asking me how I did it. I'm rich. Oh my God, now I'm rich. I've out-earned my parents. And it's just up and down and up and down and up and down and up and down. That's what success feels like. That's what growth feels like. Expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. That's the cycle. You gotta manage your nervous system or you'll be right back where you were. Who follows? Does this make sense? So this is why you read the books, you do the study, you do all that type of stuff, and you have a moment, but it doesn't actually get the result. That's the name of the game. So this is what James means when he talks about making your nervous system your ally. When your nervous system is your ally and the good stuff is automatic, he says, our higher powers of mind will be set free for their own proper work. That's your intuition. That's your creativity. That's your joy. That's your compassion. That's your empathy. Those are all the good things that are going to help you improve your life. But it's not going to happen all at once. But when you have a moment, a breakthrough, an aha moment where you actually get beyond normal homeostasis, make a decision you can't come back from and then make that decision right. See, just signing up for a course is not enough. You got to show up. You gotta have accountability. You gotta be able to actually follow through consistently. That's what alignment's all about. Who follows? Does this make sense? So when you look at a course or a program, and what's my return on investment? It's not a fucking stock. ROI is return on implementation. That's what it's all about, return on implementation. So what's gonna stand in your way? You guys should know this by now. I've been talking about it. That's right. Unhealed emotional trauma. That's the only thing holding you back. That's the only thing actually holding you back. Everything else is just a symptom. And so James says this: we are spinning our own fates, good or evil, and never to be undone. Every smallest stroke of virtue or of vice leaves it it's never so little scar. So every time there's a trauma, sometimes a trauma is a good thing. How do you create more muscle? It's called micro trauma, right? It builds stronger muscles. So the only thing that makes something a major trauma or a micro trauma in your life is your context. That's it. Sometimes the worst thing in the world, I've had clients that were in 9/11, walked away the next day, no big deal. Other people, 10 years of addiction. It was context. That's it. That's all it was. And so functional coaching, which is what I do, is the pioneering trauma hacking protocol that rapidly identifies and accelerates the healing of the hidden root mental and emotional cause. That's what functional coaching is. Because with typical life coaching is about just forward momentum, and typical therapy is about looking at what happened. Functional coaching says, this is what happened, now let's move forward. And it's a holistic process. That's what the Claim Your Power book really is. It's a 40-day process where I walk you through that process. So I've identified these things called survival patterns, and SPs are the behaviors that you do that hold you back. And there are these hidden behaviors or blocks, and they're all based on past trauma that prevent progress towards bringing your purpose to life. Stuff like this: procrastination. Who here procrastinates? No, the real procrastinators. You haven't put your hands up yet. Right? Perfectionism, right? I must perfectly raise my hand, right? Perfectionism, procrastination, addiction, there's all of these behaviors that hold you back, and it's all based on past trauma. So patterns are unhealed emotional traumas made manifest in your behavior. So when you procrastinate, for example, don't go, oh my God, I'm a procrastinator, what's wrong with me? You just say, what is in this procrastination that's keeping me safe? But don't think on it too long, you might procrastinate out of the answer. Right? Perfectionism, you name it, down the line. Any behavior that you don't like is a symptom of unhealed emotional trauma. That's it, period, end of story. It's that simple, but not that easy, because the work is hard. All right? So there's good fear and there's bad fear. What would be an example of like good fear? The tiger, the famous example, where if a tiger's coming at you, looks hungry, what should you do if it's looking hungry right at you? Should you say, Mastin said, face my fear, I'm going towards the tiger? No, maybe not run, but you exit as best you can, right? Good fear is also stuff like, I'm scared shitless to go speak on stage. Every time before I speak on stage, I have fear coming up. My context is, oh good, my body has the energy it needs to deliver value. Doesn't mean I should quit. So understand that right before anything major in your life, there will be a fear sensation. And some of you don't have panic attacks. Some of you are getting wake-up calls and then completely fucking ignoring them. If you're in a toxic relationship and you have panic attacks, you don't have a panic attack. You have the appropriate response to being in a toxic relationship, and no matter Xanax or Adderall or drugs or meditation or yoga or whatever is gonna undo that panic attack. Get the fuck out, then you'll be fine. Right? Because our body, whatever's happening in our body is the appropriate response to the underlying dysfunctional pattern. That's true for cancer, it's true for procrastination. There's a dysfunctional pattern that's underneath. And when you identify it and shift it, one day we will be able to do this for cancer. We don't know what it is yet, we'll be able to do it. We're starting to link it with the microbiome, that's another topic. All right, what's bad fear? The other 99% of fear that you experience. The fear of being seen, the fear of going live, the fear of being on Facebook, the fear of being judged, the fear of not getting love, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of success. All of that stuff is just nervous system keeping homeostasis. It serves no purpose. So fear is the opposite of love. That's not entirely accurate, because right before any successful breakthrough, you'll be afraid. And here's the thing, the Greeks had multiple words for love. Eros and agape mean very different things. And we have one word for fear, so there's this confusion about it. Who follows? Does this make sense? So not all fear is bad. And every survival pattern ends with this thought, and then I'll die. That's the nervous system keeping homeostasis. I can't quit my job and start a business because when I do, no one will buy my stuff. I'll be broke, alone, under the bridge, downtown, and then I'll die. I can't leave this toxic relationship because this is the best thing I've ever had, and no one else is going to love me better. Then I'll be all alone, and then I'll die. And on and on and on and on it goes. So you have to start calling bullshit on your nervous system and say, really? I don't think so, right? You have to start calling it. And so unhealed emotional trauma leads to low-level coping, right? Low-level coping, like this, okay? Drugs, alcohol, promiscuous sex, gossip, toxic relationships, soul-sucking job, news and social media addiction, high fructose corn syrup, blaming other people, creating drama, perpetuating abuse, hiding abuse, violence, bigotry, racism, and repressing feelings with all of the above behavior. Any violence ever, it's not about mental health for gun violence. You know what it's about? Healing the trauma that person went through. Because the other thing is, you know what mental health is? Mental health is actually the byproduct of your gut health, which is a whole other topic, right? We have to be focusing on healing the trauma and restoring gut balance. That will change the game for people. But when we have unhealed emotional trauma, this is what happens. And we're seeing more of this in the world today because there's such a pressure cooker, people don't know how to cope, right? Now, that's not you. You do personal growth work. But maybe you haven't done your trauma work, so this leads to high-level coping, right? High-level coping, yoga and yoga apparel. Seminar hopping and aha moment addiction, quantified self apps, self-help books, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, meat-free, soy-free, GMO-free, taste-free food, green juice with an emphasis on kale, fuck you kale, meditation, anything that helps you crush it, right? Blaming Mercury in retrograde, high-paying, soul-sucking job. You're like, no. I will refuse to settle for a low-paying, soul-sucking job, 6 figures, and a 401k. I'm going to sell my soul, right? No, right? Raw honey, no, not high fructose corn syrup. It has to be raw honey. It's okay if it's raw, right? Using high-level and vague scientific-sounding words for no purpose. Or spiritual words. You ever hear people like, so what do you do? Oh, I help people manifest the highest abundance of the radiance of the inner self so they can magically co-create the oneness of all so that they're able to really bring the joy and the sensation of Archangel Michael to, I don't know what I do, right? Right? What happens is when people experience trauma and they go on a self-help journey, they read the spiritual books and they start dissociating with those language patterns to feel better. And here's the thing, whenever someone is in the we language or the woo-woo, I'm super woo-woo, but I don't live in the woo-woo when I talk to people. Like we are expressing ourselves so that we are in alignment with our chakras. Right? Like, no, like what they're doing is they're coping. And by the way, I would rather someone cope that way than they go hurt someone. But they get stuck, right? They get stuck. And it's important to understand this, all right? Not speaking up and calling it the higher path. Oh, no, I'm not going to say anything. I'm so spiritual, right? And on the inside, you're like, I'm going to fucking kill this guy, right? Like, I will not call him an asshole. I'm holding space for him. That's what I'm doing, right? Like...
If you're interested in speaking, exhibiting, or getting involved in the largest personal development expos in the world, contact us today at www.thebestyouexpo.com or send us an email to info@thebestyou.co.
Just be real, right? You gotta be real, all right? Spiritual entertainment, that's when you get books and all the type of stuff, and what you do is you read it, you have the aha moment, and you think that's enough, and you keep getting the aha moments, and nothing changes, but you have these consistent aha moments. No different than watching a show. Now, it's good to fill your mind with spiritual texts, but if you think that reading a fucking book is going to change your life, no way. That might set up a life change, but no way. And by the way, most people don't even read a book. They read the first 2 chapters, and they read the next book's 2 chapters, and the next book's 2 chapters, or they don't even fucking read the book. They just read the fucking cover. Power of now, got it. Claim your power, got it, right? Like, that's it, right? I'm no fool. That's why I put together a 40-day coaching course. When you get the book, I actually coach you through it with free videos because I know you're not going to fucking read the goddamn book. Right? Reacting to xenophobia with xenophobia, right? This is when the Black Lives Matter people claim their stake, and then the All Lives Matter people claim their stake, and then they make each other wrong. Versus realizing trauma needs validation. It needs validation. African American, black people, they have been through so much systemic trauma for centuries. Epigenetics, trauma is passed down in the genes. We need to pause and go, guys, take the stage. Take the stage. We need to take a back seat right now, not because all lives matter, but because right now, that's what has to happen for that healing to take place. At the end of the day, black and white, no difference. There's a spirit and a soul inside. And at the same time, that has to happen. Same thing with women. Women have been traumatized forever. If you look at the beginnings of Christianity, Jesus wanted to pass down the teachings to his wife, Mary Magdalene, and Peter got jealous and took the church. The whole Christian doctrine has been started with misogyny. And women have been burned at the stake for being intuitive and healers. Witches are not like this evil thing. They're just like basically naturopathic doctors now, essentially, right? Basically, that's what a witch is, naturopathic doctor, right? And so the idea is like it's in the genes. So right now what's happening is everyone's in suffering and pain, lobbying for being the most significant in pain, versus understanding there's some reparations and there's some real sobering moments we have to talk to about misogyny, systemic racism, and oppression economically. Those are the traumas. And it's not going to go away until we talk about it. Yes. It's true. And it's not a Republican or Democratic thing. It's an emotional trauma thing. That's the name of the game. And certain groups have it more than others because it's literally passed down in the genes. Certain genes get turned off for resilience. So when you look at, like, for example, certain populations of people who have a hard time with alcoholism, learning, making money, it's because literally the genes are turned off. So no amount of like extra support financially will really make it better. You want to know the number one way to help someone get out of poverty? Number one way. Anybody want to know? Surround them with 10 high-functioning entrepreneurs. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. Guess how you get someone happy out of mental illness? Surround them with 10 very functioning, happy people. Because we pick it up. And that's how you turn genes back on and off, is throughout the environment that you're in. That informs it. Right? When you put a bunch of people who are like, when you look at someone who has a multiple personality disorder and you isolate them into like a mental institution and you pathologize their issues, makes no sense. But when you put them back with their family, makes total fucking sense. Because the MPD, the multiple personality disorder, was a way that someone coped with trauma. So that multiple splits in personality were how someone copes. And when you put them around the triggers of that coping, then you go, oh my God, you have to heal the root trauma first. Who follows? Does this make sense? Okay, so real quick. My fear maxim is, unless you're in mortal danger, fear is a compass showing you where to go. You're gonna feel scared, but you've got to start doing the things that you're afraid of consistently. That is the North Star for you, right there. Not towards the tiger. Okay? Everything but the tiger. Unless you're in mortal danger, fear is a compass showing you where to go. So I would make a fear list and say, here's the 10 things I've been procrastinating on because I have unhealed emotional trauma, and I'm going to go do these things. And I'm going to find support to heal the trauma along the way. All right? So in short, when you live your purpose, you turn your nervous system into your ally because you have a reason beyond yourself to face your fear. Purpose is an idea larger than yourself. Purpose is something that gives context and meaning to the pain that you've been through. You want to know, I've worked with so many women who have had healing from sexual abuse. Do you want to know what did it the moment? Anybody want to know? It's not when they blame someone. Yes, there's a recognition of what they went through, and that pain has to be witnessed without blame or changing your story, your state, or any of that shit. You got to recognize the pain. You have to deal with it. You have to look at it. You have to witness it. After that, after it's been recognized, when the time is right, that person decides, I don't know why this happened to me. I can't say it was divinely sent. I can't say that. But you know what? There are other people out there who've experienced this, who have not gotten this far, and I can help them. And now I have meaning in the pain. And here's the thing. Forgiveness is not about something that you make right what happened and justifying. Forgiveness is setting yourself free. And here's the thing. If someone hurt you, someone traumatized you, someone did something awful to you, until you forgive them, they still control you. And here's the thing. If you're stuck in that homeostasis of that trauma and you don't change your life, they are still influencing your life. Because the only reason you're stuck is because of that traumatic event. The best revenge is forgiveness. The best revenge is rearranging your nervous system so that hurt gets turned into purpose. That's how we do it. That's how we get free of what's happening in the world today. That's how we start to see eye to eye. And by the way, it doesn't mean that we have to all agree, but we can align with each other. Can you align with someone without agreeing with them? That's called a highly functioning relationship. In a great relationship, okay, please don't make one of your rules in a relationship be, I need to be with someone who always agrees with me. No. Because that's a boring relationship. The tension in a relationship where you navigate disagreements, that's where the real growth is, right? So you can be aligned with somebody but not agreeing with them. Those are two completely different things. Now there's certain things you should probably agree on, like we agree to be monogamous. That'd probably be an important one. We agree that we want to live in the same city. That might be an important one too, right? But with a lot of the other, like for example, the temperature of the house or the apartment, up for debate on that one, right? Some people like it at 75, some people like it at 65. I don't know why anyone would want it in the 70s. Personally, it needs to be in the 60s, but it has to be a conversation, right? And the last thing I'll say is this. When you have the larger debates and the larger conversations about what's happening in the country, you can't stop and be quiet because you're worried about offending people. That's not what's happening today. Today, and the other thing is, you can't make someone wrong because they did something different or because they believe in something different. We have to elevate the conversation to one around trauma because we all can share that. And that's the real Me Too. See, the Me Too movement is everybody. Now, it started with sexual trauma and sexual abuse, but that's happened on both sides. And that's not to invalidate the movement, it's actually to expand it because everyone has their own trauma. Whether it's emotional neglect, physical trauma, emotional trauma, a breakup, a heartbreak, the brain interprets it the same. Could be PTSD from the war, who knows, right? But the goal is that when you have a trauma-informed conversation, it changes the game. You view your personal development differently, and purpose becomes everything because purpose changes the context of the conversation. And when you change the context of the conversation, that's when things really start to shift. And that's what the world needs today. The last thing the world needs today is someone preaching about affirmations only. I love affirmations as a tool. I love Kundalini Yoga as a tool, EMDR as a tool. But the deeper issue is the trauma work. And I really believe you're starting to see it a little bit, but I think the next generation of coaches, healers, and therapists are going to be trauma hackers because that's what has to happen today. And it's been a real joy to be able to introduce this to you guys because I think it's the most important thing that we can be talking about is this idea. So here's the thing. You have to do what you're afraid of until you're no longer afraid of it. That's how you change your life. I wish there was some other simple way. If you want to speak and you're scared to speak, what do? Speak. Talk about changing your nervous system, that's how you fucking do it, right? You're scared of getting married to someone who you know is your soulmate, what do? Marry that motherfucker, right? That's what you do. I'm not even kidding. Now, you gotta know it's the right person. Don't be like doing it because there's some level of, like you have to do it because that's what he wants or she wants. But you've gotta lean into that because that's where all the good stuff is. And the only difference between successful people and people who are not successful is that resilience in the face of something scary. That's it. Everything else is a wash. So you got to get support. You cannot do it alone. You absolutely have to get support. And find the modalities that work for you. Maybe it's EFT, maybe it's EMDR, maybe it's functional life coaching, maybe it's Kundalini Yoga, maybe it's cognitive behavioral therapy. I mean, fill in the blank, right? But find the ones that work for you because what works for you may not work for somebody else and what works for somebody else may not work for you. And if you're interested, would anyone here be interested in trauma hacking? This is not a sales pitch, by the way, not a sales pitch, okay? So if you're interested, come to mastinkipp.com/trauma hacking. And I have a questionnaire there because I've been thinking about this and talking about this to myself for a long time. But I have so much information and so much knowledge and so many resources. I don't know how to present it to someone who's never heard the term before or someone who, I don't know how to teach what I know, but I know what I know. Does that make sense? So this is like a questionnaire that will help me be in touch with you when we start to release content around this and help me understand like, how did this talk sink in with you and questions that you're asking about this because it's going to help me clarify my thinking more. And the other thing is, if you want the experience of functional life coaching, claimyourpowerbook.com, that's where the book is, Claim Your Power Book. I think there's books here too. But at claimyourpowerbook.com, you just enter your receipt and there's a 40-day coaching process where I coach you through that program like directly in a video series, like 40 days. This ain't no 3 video bullshit. It's 40 fucking days. Like it's really serious and it's awesome, the value. Totally free. So go to claimyourpowerbook.com. No hard sell, just an invitation. So why are you going to apply trauma hacking in your life? Oh, please. Changed my life for the better. That's right. I believe because now more than ever the world needs your purpose. That's why. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys. Awesome. Thanks, you guys. I'll see you soon.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.